This wasn't how the season was supposed to go. Not this intense. Not this late in the year. Parker Schnabel pushed his mining operation further than he ever had before, gambling everything on ground most crews had already given up on. While others packed up and shut down, Parker kept working, burning fuel, stressing machines, and taking risks that could have ended the entire season in failure. But instead of collapsing, the numbers began to rise, and fast. Week after week, gold kept pouring in. What started as a desperate attempt to survive the season suddenly turned into something no one expected. Before long, Parker crossed a line few miners ever reach. This became the biggest haul of his career. Over $40 million in gold, pulled from one of the longest, harshest seasons he's ever faced. Every extra day brought more pressure. Every cleanup had to deliver. Walking away early was never an option. This wasn't just about gold anymore. It was about proving that pushing past the breaking point was the only way forward. And before we dive into how this season turned into a record-breaking run, hit like if you enjoy real gold rush stories, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Week 1. The discovery that changed everything. Within the first week, Parker's crew uncovered something that completely shifted the mood of the camp. When the survey team took their initial readings at the new cut, the results jumped in a way no one expected. Early readings are usually modest, but this time the gold density charts spiked immediately. The crew exchanged looks, trying to understand what they were seeing. Even Parker was caught off guard. Strong signals this early simply don't happen under normal conditions. That's when everyone realized this ground might be hiding something huge. Previous visual ground mapping had labeled the area as high potential, but no one imagined the data would be this accurate. As the team zoomed in on drone scans and ground-penetrating radar layers, dense clusters appeared beneath the surface, almost like thick, gold-rich veins buried deep underground. The crew's geologist finally broke the silence. "Guys, this isn't normal. This looks like a deposit from a completely different level." Parker's reaction said it all. Equal parts excitement, disbelief, and fear that it could still be a false signal. But the next test erased any doubt. When the soil sample hit the table, tiny flecks of gold began sparkling in the sunlight. The reaction was instant. Eyes widened. Some crew members whistled, others just stood there in silence. Parker finally said, "If the surface looks like this, imagine what's underneath." That was all it took. Everyone knew this ground was the real deal. Energy surged through the camp. Machines were prepped faster than ever. The mapping team pushed deeper scans, and the old gold rush excitement came rushing back. Parker knew this discovery had the potential to redefine his entire season. No one could say how much gold was buried below, but one thing was certain: something big was coming. Collapsing cuts and early setbacks. Just as the season began with promise, nature pushed back. The cut Parker was counting on suddenly started filling with water. Constant rain and unstable soil weakened the walls. At first, the crew thought it was manageable. Then one morning, the entire west wall gave way. The bulldozer operator barely escaped, jumping clear before the machine could be dragged down. That was the moment everyone realized how close they were to disaster. Equipment failures followed one after another. Excavator hydraulic lines kept bursting. The wash plant jammed repeatedly. Heavy trucks slid helplessly through thick mud. With every breakdown, Parker's frustration grew. Over the radio, his voice carried urgency. "We don't have time for this. If we lose momentum, the season's done." The pressure weighed heavily on the crew. Early downtime is a nightmare for any mining operation. One evening, the tension peaked. Parker sat alone at the edge of the cut, staring into the ground, questioning whether he'd chosen the wrong place entirely. Whispers spread through the camp, and even the production crew, that this might be the hardest season of his life. For a brief moment, it felt like everything was slipping away. The setbacks didn't stop there. Extra pumps were installed to control the water, but thick mud clogged them almost immediately. Machines struggled as if something unseen was working against them. Days passed with barely any movement on the gold tables. Parker's expression said it all. He was pushing against an invisible wall and losing. Crew members quietly muttered to one another, "If this keeps up, we're finished." Tony Beats raises the pressure. As Parker battled setbacks, new tension entered the picture. Word spread that Tony Beats had expanded his operation to 3 separate sites this season. Reports showed Tony's machines running full throttle, with early cleanups already producing strong results. The pressure intensified. In mining, comparison is brutal, and Parker knows that better than anyone. Social media only made it worse. Fans flooded the comments with messages like, "Tony's dominating this season," and "Parker needs a miracle." Parker appeared calm on the surface, but inside, the rivalry weighed heavily. This wasn't just about gold anymore. It was about reputation, pride, and legacy. Then Tony made another move, securing new land leases rumored to hold high-grade pay dirt. And just like that, the race was on. Word quickly spread through the camp that Tony might actually overtake Parker this season. Parker knew it too. If he didn't turn things around fast, Tony would walk away as the undisputed king of the Yukon. That pressure turned the season into a psychological battle. Parker started running machines himself during night shifts, refusing to give up a single hour. Even the production team leaned into the tension, cutting the 2 miners' cleanups side by side, making the rivalry feel quiet, but dangerous. Watching Parker struggle early on, many viewers were convinced Tony would easily pull ahead. The uncertainty made the season even more explosive. While equipment failed and cuts collapsed, Parker was fighting on 2 fronts, against the ground and against Tony's relentless pace. To many, it looked like Parker was on the edge of a complete breakdown, with Tony poised to take the crown. But the real story was only just beginning. The first big cleanup, a 300-ounce shock. After weeks of constant stress, muddy cuts, broken machines, and non-stop pressure, Parker finally called for the first major cleanup of the season. The crew feared the worst. With all the setbacks, they expected the gold totals to be disappointing. But when the mats were laid out and the muddy slurry was washed away, something unexpected happened. Thin, bright flakes of gold began appearing across the table. At first, no one spoke. Then, as the gold kept showing, the mood shifted completely. When the weigh-in started, even Parker wasn't prepared for what followed. The numbers kept climbing. 100 ounces, 150, 220, and then the final count landed at 302 ounces. The crew stood frozen. Some grabbed their heads. Others stared at the cameras. A few could only shake their heads and mutter, "This is insane." Parker paused, stunned, then cracked a quiet smile. Pure relief. A purity test showed the gold was about 91% pure, which is high for the Yukon. That put the cleanup at roughly $600,000 in gold. The effect was instant. The spark returned to the crew's eyes. Exhaustion was still there, but belief came rushing back. Parker knew this cleanup didn't just boost morale. It changed the direction of the entire season. The ground wasn't weak. It was powerful. Very powerful. At one point, Parker stared silently at the gold on the table, as if it were trying to tell him something. Then he said quietly, "If the first big cleanup looks like this, imagine what's deeper." That single line reignited the feeling that something even bigger was still waiting below. Strange signals near bedrock. The very next day, the survey team brought out ground-penetrating radar and scanned closer to bedrock. Parker was hoping for good news, but what appeared on the screen stopped everyone cold. One area lit up with an unusually dense signal, a wide oval-shaped zone packed with unreadable but extremely heavy readings. It looked like a thick, mineralized layer sitting just above bedrock. When the depth calibration was adjusted, the signal only grew stronger. The geologist finally spoke. "This is one of the strongest signatures we've seen all season." Parker stared at the screen, then pointed and said quietly, "This doesn't happen by accident. Something big is down there." The crew was split between excitement and fear. Some whispered that it could be a solid gold vein. Others thought it might be a massive pocket that hadn't been touched in decades. When the AI mapping software processed the data and rendered a 3D model, a chill ran through the room. Bright, dense clusters glowed beneath the bedrock. Not just one, several. Parker immediately knew this wasn't a normal gold zone. Signals this concentrated only appear when a continuous, heavy deposit is buried underground. The crew could barely believe what they were seeing. Tony's rivalry still hung in the air, but this discovery gave everyone a whole new level of hope. The tension became almost unbearable. Even the camera crew whispered among themselves, saying that if the jackpot was real, this season would go down in history. Parker summed it up with one quiet sentence that became the heart of the episode. If this is real, we're sitting on something massive. Parker's secret move, the double-cut gamble. By now, Parker knew the season was slipping away. Collapsing walls, mechanical failures, and lost time had put him dangerously behind. At the current pace, saving the season would be difficult. Reaching $40 million would be nearly impossible. So he made a decision that shocked everyone on site. He ordered 2 cuts to be run at the same time. In mining, that move is considered borderline reckless. 2 cuts mean double the fuel, double the manpower, double the breakdowns, and double the risk. But Parker wasn't thinking cautiously. As he put it, if the jackpot's down there, we can't crawl our way to it. The danger was obvious. If both cuts came up empty, the season wouldn't just fall short, it could collapse completely. Fuel costs were skyrocketing. Spare parts were running out. The crew was already exhausted. Still, Parker didn't hesitate. Yeah, we could lose, he said. But the upside is way bigger. Nerves spread through the camp, but so did his confidence. The operation split in 2. One crew pushed deeper into the main cut, while the other carefully worked along the unstable west side. Shifts grew longer. Night work intensified. More than once, Parker climbed into an excavator himself after dark, refusing to slow down. It felt like the entire operation was being held together by his determination alone. Running 2 cuts at the same time is a nightmare for most miners. For Parker, it became the defining gamble of the season. The pressure was intense. Either he was about to make history, or everything could collapse at once. Even the production crew quietly warned the same thing. One wall failure, and both cuts could go down like dominoes. But Parker didn't make the call blindly. The ground was sending signals. Density spikes, strange soil behavior, and abnormal readings all pointed to something massive hiding beneath the high signal zone. This wasn't just good ground, it was monster ground, and Parker committed fully. The hidden pay layer, the turning point, the real payoff of the double-cut gamble revealed itself when the east cut reached a new depth. The first few buckets looked ordinary, nothing unusual. Then one evening, an excavator bucket came up with an odd shine. At first, the crew thought it might be a fluke, but once the soil was washed, small yet heavy gold particles flashed through the slurry. Everything stopped. A radio call crackled through the camp. "Boss, you need to see this, right now." Parker grabbed a handful of dirt and rubbed it between his fingers. Bright yellow specks popped into view. He paused, then said, "Guys, we just found something insane." The reaction was instant. Excitement raced through the crew like electricity. As they peeled back a few more feet, it became clear this wasn't a normal pay layer. It was a thick, gold-rich streak stretching across a large section of the east cut wall. Soil tests confirmed the concentration was several times higher than anything they'd seen before. The geologist could barely contain his shock. "Parker, this is high-grade material. This could change the entire season." It felt like the moment in a movie when the treasure finally reveals itself. Crew members shouted. Even some of the camera team laughed in disbelief. Parker just stood there, staring at the ground with a quiet smile. The double-cut gamble was finally paying off. Machines went straight to full throttle. Teams from both cuts joined forces to chase the newly exposed pay layer. The suspense was overwhelming. If the gold was this strong here, there could be even richer pockets waiting below. Non-stop cleanups and a gold surge. From that point on, Parker ran the operation around the clock. The machines never stopped. The energy in the camp completely shifted. Everyone believed they were sitting on something huge. The first cleanup after the discovery delivered 250 ounces. No one expected a jump that big. When the gold hit the table, eyes lit up. The purity was strong, and the value pushed close to $500,000. Parker kept it simple. Good start. Keep the pace. But the real shock came the following week. Continuous digging and fresh streaks delivered 280 ounces. The crew stood silent for a moment, struggling to process how the numbers just kept climbing. Parker admitted later this was the most unexpected growth phase of the entire season. In just 2 weeks, they had pulled nearly $1 million worth of gold from the ground. Then came week 3, and it changed everything. 320 ounces in a single cleanup. Hands literally shook during the weigh-in. The gold piled so high on the table that the camera crew adjusted their filters. That batch alone was worth around $640,000. Crew members hugged each other. Parker smiled and said, "This is insane." But we're not stopping. The 4th week dipped slightly, but the numbers were still unreal. 290 ounces. By mid-season, Parker had recovered roughly 1,140 ounces of gold, valued at around $2.5 million. The 4-week run was so explosive that even the production team kept saying viewers wouldn't believe it. The Yukon was buzzing. Other miners took notice. Fans started calling Parker unstoppable. But Parker knew better. When numbers rise this fast, trouble often follows. Government inspection and rising tension. The very next week, 3 government vehicles rolled into camp without warning. No one knew if it was routine or something far worse. Inspectors immediately began asking for documents, claim records, water use data, environmental compliance reports. The mood shifted instantly. The air felt heavy. Parker personally walked the inspectors through the site, but the concern on his face was obvious. In mining, a government shutdown is the worst-case scenario. One red flag can shut down machines, halt crews, and end a season overnight. Whispers spread through camp. If they shut us down, it's over. The inspectors checked everything. Water samples from the wash plant, fuel storage areas, drainage systems, again and again. The level of scrutiny suggested a serious complaint had reached higher authorities. Then came the moment that froze everyone. One inspector pointed toward an unstable section of the East Cut and said, "This area may not be safe for continued operations." Faces dropped. If that section was closed, access to the high-grade layer would be nearly impossible. Parker knew he was standing on a razor's edge, millions in gold on one side, and the threat of a legal shutdown on the other. And the season's fate now hung in the balance. The inspection dragged on for 4 long hours. During that time, no one in camp spoke. Every machine sat silent, as if the entire season was holding its breath. Even the production crew shut off their cameras and stood back. When the inspectors finally left, Parker exhaled deeply and said, "We got lucky today, but this isn't over." Parker's breaking point and his decision to fight back. In the days that followed, the tension never really lifted. The machines were running again, but fear lingered in every movement. Everyone knew that if another inspection came with a red flag, the season would end instantly. That night, Parker sat alone by the campfire. The air was cold, but what weighed on him felt even heavier. His face showed exhaustion, frustration, and doubt. One question kept looping through his mind. Am I losing? A camera crew captured the moment from afar, careful not to interrupt. Parker picked up a clump of dirt, rubbed it between his hands, and let it fall slowly back to the ground. Under his breath, he said, "So much work, so many risks, and pressure from every direction." He stared into the darkness for a long moment, then finally spoke aloud. "I didn't come here to lose." It wasn't just self-motivation. It felt like a warning to the season itself. A few minutes later, several crew members approached. Parker stood up, calm but firm, and delivered a short speech that hit hard. Problems aren't our enemies, they're our tests. If we break, we lose. If we stand together, this season is ours. No one cheered, no one argued, they simply nodded. From that moment on, everything changed. The comeback begins. The machines roared back to life at full throttle. Double shifts were locked in. Without saying it out loud, the crew made a silent promise. For Parker, and for this season, they would not back down. That night wasn't Parker's breakdown. It was his rebirth. Just days later, the story of the season flipped completely. The East Cut suddenly came alive. The deeper streak they'd been chasing exploded with gold, so rich that flakes were visible in nearly every bucket. Crew members looked at each other in disbelief. "If the buckets look like this," one said, "the cleanup is going to be insane." When cleanup day arrived, the atmosphere felt different. Mats were laid out. Water pressure was cranked up. And the moment the first mats were washed, gold flashed across the table. Shock spread across every face. Each tray was so heavy that the scale overflowed again and again. Parker only needed a glance to know this wasn't a normal cleanup. This was something massive. The weigh-in began. 100 ounces, 200, 350. When the count hit 420 ounces, jaws dropped. But it still wasn't finished. The final tray was weighed, and the number appeared on the screen. 503 ounces. For a split second, the entire wash plant fell silent. Then the explosion. Cheers, laughter, shouting, pure disbelief. The purity test confirmed it. Over 90% pure. Nearly $1 million in gold, pulled from the ground in a single week. Parker leaned back, closed his eyes, and took a long breath, as if months of pressure had finally lifted. Around him, crew members smiled, some with tears in their eyes. This wasn't just gold, it was the biggest comeback of the season. Parker said only one thing: "This is why we don't quit." And in that moment, everyone realized Parker wasn't just mining, he was making history. Tony Beats reacts as the rivalry explodes. News of the $1 million cleanup spread fast, and the entire Yukon felt the shift. Social media lit up. Some fans declared Parker unstoppable. Others fired back, claiming Tony Beats would still take the crown. Gold Rush hashtags trended nonstop. The production crew fueled the rivalry by cutting between Parker and Tony's operations. When asked about Parker's massive cleanup, Tony brushed it off with his trademark confidence. Found a good patch. So what? Real miners win with consistency. His crew had mixed reactions. Some impressed, others clearly skeptical. Tony felt the pressure, even if he refused to admit it. He kept repeating one line: "We'll see who's boss at the end of the season." Online debates exploded. Reddit and Facebook groups lit up with arguments. Parker's impossible comeback versus Tony's long-standing dominance. It felt like a silent war, where every cleanup landed like a punch. And the true climax was still ahead. The final push, survival mode. The last month of the season became pure survival. Parker and his crew knew the math. If they were going to reach $40 million, there were no shortcuts left. It meant non-stop work, double shifts, no downtime. Machines ran day and night, engines roaring through exhaustion. Diesel fumes hung thick in the air. Crew members slept wherever they could, on benches, in trucks, on the ground, but no one quit. Parker's words from the campfire echoed through the site, driving everyone forward when their bodies begged to stop. But the harder they pushed, the harder everything pushed back. The wash plant clogged. Hydraulic pumps overheated. Then, in the middle of the night, an excavator track snapped, shutting everything down for hours. Panic spread fast. Everyone knew the truth. If the breakdowns didn't stop, the $40 million dream would die right there in the mud. But Parker didn't step back. Not now. Parker didn't step back. He stepped in. Night after night, he climbed into an excavator himself. Some evenings, he showed up with a toolbox, working side by side with the mechanics just to keep the machines alive. The pressure was relentless. One question hovered over the entire site. Can they maintain this pace until the end? Even the production crew whispered the same warning. One slip now, and everything could collapse. Every day became a three-way battle. Against the clock, against failing equipment, and against Tony Beats pushing just as hard on his own ground. But Parker never lost focus. His eyes stayed fixed on the jackpot zone, the ground that had turned the entire season upside down. The final weigh-in, $40 million revealed. Then came the moment that would decide it all. The final cleanup, the biggest weigh-in of the season. The entire camp gathered around the tables. Mechanics, truck drivers, operators, camera crews, everyone wanting to witness whatever came next. As the gold hit the scale, the numbers climbed rapidly. 200 ounces, 400, 700. Then the last tray dropped, and the place erupted. The final total climbed past 6,800 ounces, pushing the season's value to nearly $40 million. The purity was even better, averaging between 90 and 92%, leaving no doubt about the win. The reaction was raw and unforgettable. Grown men broke down in tears. Shouts echoed across the cut. Crew members climbed onto machines that had nearly beaten them and celebrated on top of the iron that carried them through. Parker stood quietly for a moment, staring at the gold as if he wasn't sure it was real. Then he finally spoke, his voice calm but certain. If this is what we pulled this season, imagine what's still out there. The camp fell silent. Everyone understood the same thing. This wasn't an ending, it was a statement. The season might be finished, but the story was far from over. Please subscribe to the Timefold channel and don't forget to like